All right.
No, it will be fine.
Do we fit?
Yeah. We're good.
Well, welcome everyone to this third edition of the Artist Talks organized by WERC. The guys that's sitting here next to me. My name is Sita van Hork. I work at an institute called V2, Lab for the Unstable Media, and for those that do not know what that is, it's in Rotterdam. It's an institute, interdisciplinary institute for art and media technology, and at V2 we present, produce, archive and publish research around art, technology and society. And a big part of my work, what I do there, is actually guiding different artists in residence to help them create their work. So thinking through what they want to make, why they want to make that, asking reflective questions, helping them in the creation process, but also present their work, helping them to write, doing research themes. So a lot of what I do also at V2 is working with emerging artists and thinking through thematics like artificial technology, inequality, feminism, gender inequality, all of these things that are, to me, good things to talk about when we're thinking about the societal impact that technology has. And today I am actually invited to guide a conversation that we're going to have with Pablo. But before we do that, we're going to have a conversation with you guys, because I would love to hear a little bit of context about why we're sitting here and what we're going to do. So Joachim, would you please introduce us to the Artist Talks and why you decided to organize this?
Yes, thank you. First of all, welcome everybody. So I think everybody knows us, but we're of course an art collector from Groningen, and in the last 15 years we've worked a lot nationally, internationally, with a lot of digital arts, new media art, interactive art. And while we were working, when so we went over to Japan and we went over to Jakarta and we kept making these artworks and presenting them over there, and we felt the need to reconnect with Groningen, the city that sometimes, and we talked about it earlier as well, it's easy to leave Groningen after you're done studying, after you're done everything, and go to the Randstad or go somewhere else to do your real work. And we felt that it's a bit of a shame, because we think it's better, things are definitely possible here. And because we stayed, a lot of things were possible for us as well. So we thought, all right, let's then create or help create the scene that we know that people want to be here, because we know a lot of artists that stayed here as well with us, and we know a lot of young artists and a lot of students that are studying here that are very interested in creating this new media and this digital art. So we decided to open up our studio to invite our community, the people that we know and people that we've worked with and people that helped us grow up as well, and to see if we can together create this new media arts community, to invite people over that we think, all right, those people create the scene. Those people are the people that we look up to, that they're defining basically what new media art is, and also help people here explain where our inspiration comes from. And so that's the reason, at least we do this Artist Talks. Yeah, that's what we do, the Artist Talks.
Great, thank you. So it's also great to hear that you are the people also who are interested in this and also are part of your working field in Groningen, right?
Yeah, definitely.
That's wonderful. Great. Then my next question is going to be to Jelle. Can you explain us a little bit, maybe, I don't know if everyone is aware that there's also WERC Lab, lab in Dutch. Can you share with us a little bit about what that is and why that's important to you?
Yeah, it's basically in the same line as what Joachim was just saying. But yeah, we have a very simple question to you guys, our Groningen audience, is do you want to work with us? It's quite simple, it's quite straightforward, but the reason why I'm asking it like this is we're now here at our studio where we normally create work, and this is actually how WERC also started, by renting out a studio together with the three of us. And from there on we started creating artworks, doing experiments, and we like to work on projects with a sort of a pressure cooking, intense deadline, where we can meet new people, experiment, do research, and we want to, the projects that we enjoyed most together is the project where this was very intense and where we had loads of momentum, and you basically isolate yourself and just work. And we want to ask our community if they want to create a moment with us, or actually we want to create a moment, and we would like to ask you if you would like to participate in that. And so I would like to emphasize that this is very open question, but we're open to talk to everybody. And we offer our studio, we offer our facilities, hardware, software, our knowledge, guidance, network, inspiration, whatever. So if you're up for that, please let us know and talk to one of us afterwards or later.
Yeah, great. Because there will be drinks after we have a talk, and then there will be drinks, so they'll be walking around, so you can just knock on that door and let them know, right? Yeah? Great, thank you. So we're getting to why we're actually sitting here. There's a very special guest that was invited to this. His name is Pablo Valbuena, and where is he sitting actually? Oh, he's standing there. Look, he's in the corner. He's in the corner drinking a tea. And I would like to ask you, Olaf, to you invited him for a particular reason, right? And I'm very curious to hear, like, why were you so inspired to invite him, and what do you think about his work is very interesting?
Well, thank you. I think for the people that know us from when we started the things we were doing, we were called sort of VJ WERC. I think we have an old poster up there from 10 years of doing visuals for parties. And that was at a time when video mapping didn't exist. And we started projecting during these events, and then we realized, we can actually draw in lines of the building, and we started to build sculptures. And for us, this was such a aha moment, and it was something we didn't see anywhere, so we thought we invented something. And then Pablo came along. And the one you see on the TV behind you currently, and I think, if you paid it, this is an artwork, I think it's from 2006. And here he coined the term augmented sculpture, and I think this is one that's been used for a lot of people that do projection mapping on sculptures, on facades, and they all talk about the augmentation and the way light influences the physical space. So that work was the one we quite quickly saw when we were doing our projection mappings, and we saw this one and we were super inspired by the aesthetics of it, the purity, the perspective, the play with light. So I think that one really set us on a course where we thought, okay, there's more people in this field doing these things. And I think for the students out here, this is happening before the softwares exist that you now know. Like I know students here like, oh yeah, Mapper, I can do this, Touch Designer. That stuff didn't exist. So seeing other people coming up with ways to do this and actually coming up with the way to use a projector in that way, and having it mimic volumetric lighting and augmentation, that was a very inspiring thing. And I think from that moment on, we started following his works, and we saw the projection mapping in The Hague, I think, was a really good one as well for us to see perspective and light. And I think then it evolved to his work going into light as a medium itself, into volumetric spaces. So I think he helped define and build projection mapping as a medium, and then in the whole artistic practice that he's probably going to dive into, I hope at least, to explain why it is an augmented sculpture and what the physical world is versus the digital world or the virtual world, and how they can exist in the same space and time and be made visible using light. Does that make sense?
To me it does, definitely. Thank you for explaining it. It's going to be a very interesting talk, hearing also this this wish. So maybe a little bit about the context and the format about the artist talks. I don't know if you've been here before. This is the third one, so the third run of it. And I was asked to particularly invite you to ask questions, because it's not just me holding the mic. There you go.
Ooh, I think we should kind of leave that up to Pablo to explain, maybe. I think it is a term coined for, like, it's video mapping, projection mapping. It is knowing where the pixels of a projector are in relationship to your physical space. So if you look at this one, it's actually, so all the like, knowing that the hand is projected on exactly that spot is how you send out the pixels to that piece of surface. That is the very simple way, like how to get the pixel in the right place or draw in the pixel on the right place of the surface. That's the simplified version of it. And then projection mapping is these buildings, 3D. These 3D stuff. There's a whole field of that. So I think you'll see a lot of the examples. When there's a projector involved, yeah.
Thank you for that question. I also want to emphasize that any question is welcome throughout this whole talk that we're going to have. I'm going to ask questions. Probably you will have some questions, but if at any moment you feel like, hey, I'm curious, what is this? Or maybe you already thought of a question that you came with, just hold up your hand at any time and I'll look through. And if I don't comment, like if I don't see you, then just make a sound so that I'm aware. Yeah, don't start screaming all at the same time. But yeah, it's really an open conversation. So we're doing it together. So feel welcome to ask anything at any time. Am I forgetting something that is needed? No?
I think it's time for Pablo, no?
Yes, let's invite him. Pablo, please join us. Great. Okay. Welcome. Nice that you're here.
Thank you very much. Thank you for the very nice words. And thanks for the invitation. It has been a bit of a challenge to arrive, but KLM apparently wanted to sabotage the event, but canceling flights last minute, but we managed. Thanks to the team also of WERC that did a great job adjusting.
So I'm going to ask you first something personal before we get into your work, just to get to know you a little bit, and then we dive into your thoughts and your work. Could you share something with us that you would normally not share with a stranger?
That's that's a good start, no? I thought that I was going to have some time to warm up, but something that I wouldn't share with a stranger. Well, just the fact of being artists, I think we are used to communicate through the work, no? Through the work that we do. This is our way to communicate. So already being in a place where you have to speak about the work and to maybe to talk about the what is behind the work in a way that maybe sometimes can feel a bit or can generate a bit of insecurity, no? Because there are things that not every artist want to see or want to show what is the process to get there, because sometimes there are a lot of doubts, the process is hard to get there, no? And many times this is something that is not seen. So maybe I think hopefully through the conversation that we're going to have, some of these things might So I might wait a bit.
No, that's great. And also thank you for opening up that, you know, your own practice and sharing with us more intimately how you get to a certain idea and how you work through that, because I think that's very, yeah, it just opens up a new field of honesty somehow that we can all learn and that we can understand better how to get there. So that's really great. So thank you for also allowing us to see that part of you throughout this conversation.
We'll see, we'll see.
So you brought some imageries, right? We can see it here in the back.
Yes. We have 40 minutes, so it's going to be. Oops.
That happens sometimes. Don't be scared.
Preparing the talk, I wanted to focus in two latest projects, the latest two projects that I have done, and looking a bit backwards to say, like, you know, how do I contextualize it with previous work? It's always a bit tricky to say, like, who is going to be there, what they are interested to talk about. Olaf was speaking about augmented sculpture. We could, or about projection mapping. Now we could just dedicate 3 hours talking about that. But I wanted to, when I was looking back at my work, I saw these first projects like augmented sculpture, like the projections in buildings, and I realized that there was an intent to work with a space, with time, in a very abstract way, very pure, very pure in the sense of, very, sometimes even non-emotional, no? Or emotional for me, but I don't know how to say it, but quite a bit rational, no? if you like. And the latest two projects that I have done, one has been a project in working with the voices of the singers and the rituals that happen in a cathedral, in a cathedral in London, St. Paul's Cathedral. And the other one has been a piece in Ukraine, working with poets. And I was looking at these two points in time, and I thought that, well, it seems that, you know, there has been a shift, no, in my work, and looking back at all these projects, I could see how somehow I don't know, the work is evolving in a certain way, and maybe I wanted to focus on this maybe shift, no? So maybe talk about a few of the earlier projects and then jump into the last ones.
Sounds good. Where do you want to start?
So I wanted to start, like, well, I titled From Space to Place, no? And I think what I want to say here is what is when we talk about, there are two words that we see that we have been also talking about, and that they are coming up a lot. One is the word place, and the other one is that of ritual, no? A ritual, no? And they are related. Like, I think we can say that place is to space, what a ritual is to time, no? There's this idea, what is the difference when a space becomes a place? And there's something that is very about what happens, or how we humans inhabit that space, how we use it, the ritual is a bit the same, no? And I think there's these two quotes that I wanted to share. One is about the embodied space, which is this idea that actually space doesn't mean anything until we are in there, not only in there, but we are in there with our bodies. No, it's not something abstract. It's something that we have to experience, and we have to perceive not only with the vision or with the sound, but with the full body. No, like circulating a space gives you feeling if it's cold or if it's warm, or how you is it dark? Is it welcoming? The people around there, is it a place that welcomes you, or is it a place where you feel other more darker feelings? No, this is something that defines a space very importantly. No, and there's this other quote that speaks about rituals by Byung-Chul Han, that says that the rituals are to time what dwelling is to space. No, they structure time, they furnish it, they make time habitable, and this is something that I'm very interested in, how to make, and this might be more linked to the latest projects, but how to turn, when I'm invited to a place, to a space, and I want to do something, and what I do, the installation I do, even if it's going to happen for a short time, but it gets embedded in the memory of the place. And sometimes it happens that people cannot think about this place again without what I have done there. No? And this is when you realize that actually, this notion of place is something that is linked to our memory, to our experiences, to our own subjectivity. And you were saying before, you were making this differentiation between objective and subjective space, and I think that this is a bit the key, no? That everything is about how we experience it. Well, I think we're maybe too much theory. So one of the this was the first project. I was looking at the screen and I was like, this is not what I'm showing. Sorry, it's not the same screen. So this is the first project. I was trained as an architect, and this idea of the relationship between time and space has been always there. And in this piece, I feel tempted to go a bit further because of what you have, but maybe it's a discussion that we can have afterwards, because otherwise I don't think we will get to the third slide. But there was this idea of working with a sculptor. I wanted to. I was shifting, and I started to practice as I don't know what at that time, but I started doing my things, and later it became clear that was an artistic practice, but it took a while. And I was interested in the sculpture, and I was interested in how to insert time in a sculpture. And quite quickly, the idea of film and video become like, that could be a way, to insert the time dimension into a sculpture. And quite quickly, I by my training, by my education, I was used to work with CAD software, 3D software. So it was very natural for me to think about, I have an architectural model that is made of cardboard like that, and I can make a 3D model out of it. I know the dimensions, so it's easy to make a model. And quite quickly arrived the idea of saying, I have a model that is built physically. I can build the same model virtually, and then I want to insert time. How do I do it? I can physically. The time frame of matter is to modify something physically takes a lot of energy. It takes a lot of time. It's not something that you can do easily. While in the virtual world, everything is very easy. In this sense, you can reshape things, you can slice them, you can turn them into something different, and it's relatively energy free. So what I thought is how can I fluidly and continuously switch between these two worlds, and the fact that you could place a camera, a virtual camera in a 3D software, and with a certain angle, lens, and everything, and just reproduce that backwards with a projector. Just quite quickly made this connection. So the idea was making a physical model with cardboard, then reproducing it virtually, then filming it from a place in the virtual space, and with a certain camera ratio that would match the properties of the projector. And then the idea was all these transformations that are happening in the virtual space, take them back to reality through the projection of light. That proved to be a bit more complex than the theory, but it worked. It worked quite straightforward, and all of you were speaking about a specific software that now makes things quite easy. At the time, and I still, when I present this piece, for instance, I still do the same. I still do it in the old way. I develop my own workflow. It was much more slow, but it was much more precise, and actually it allowed you to think in 3D instead of what software mapping usually does, that it's basically adding different planes to things. No, it allowed you to think sculpturally into a space, which produced that actually the result was something that was different than what you could have seen somewhere.
Does this also answer your question a little bit more?
In some kind of way.
Okay, good.
Well, that's probably
That's enough.
a good
Because
start.
this was 2006, right?
Yeah.
That work, yeah, okay.
Then what I realized is that it was interesting, but what happened if you actually took out the sculpture and started working with these ideas with a space, no? And it became much more interesting in the sense, for me at least personally, in the sense that I started to realize that you could completely transform locations that you knew already very well into something that was very different. No? And I started doing these pieces that perceptually really shifted the spaces in a quite dramatic way. No? Like doing smaller pieces like the previous one, larger pieces like this one, where there were like 8-10 projectors, and you could really be immersed. Is this idea, no, where you are really inside the projection. No? Right now, we are very used to this type of projects. I don't remember. This is 2010, but yeah. And this is a project that also happened not too far from here in Today's Art in 2008, and that was dealing a bit with the same ideas of using, and in this case, the building was perfect to be used as a screen of itself. No? So this is what is interesting, that what you use is a three-dimensional volume where you are projecting something that it's a representation of itself, but you are projecting into itself. So that. So
we have a question.
Yeah.
Quick question. Did you ever spoke to the architect?
I didn't. Yeah, architects are funny sometimes. I was educated. I studied architecture, so I know them well. But I didn't. But it's interesting when there's a project with architects, in collaboration with architects. It's very interesting because usually, I don't know, but I have this thing that many artists tell to me, once I was an artist, or once I really wanted to be an artist, or there's this kind of interest, obviously, in artistic practices, and well, not all the architects, but many architects are interested in and what I also appreciate is that they found a lot of connections with this type of work, no? So it's always a pleasure, and not always easy, but it's always interesting. But no, I didn't talk to. It's Eastman? No. No, it's not Niemeyer. The Hague. Sorry. Yeah, he's super well known.
Before we move on, Pablo,
Yes.
You mentioned a few minutes ago, you said, while I was starting to do this, the projection mapping, you said, I didn't really know yet that was an artistic practice. I was just kind of like following what I really like to do. And I'm wondering, because now you're showing us, like, we're going through the years, and I'm wondering, like, in the very beginning, you started as, like, you would call it an emerging artist, so you started, like, developing your practice. At what point did you realize, hey, this is actually an artistic practice that I'm developing, and this is the way that I'm going?
I think that was gradual, and it was something where I would say that I was working on a relatively creative work. I was working in Amsterdam, actually, and I was developing architecture for for the video game and the film industry. So virtual architecture. So I was designing this kind of architecture. So it was a paid, it was an office normal job, but it was frustrating creatively in the sense that there were many interesting ideas that didn't get to the actual realization. So that made me decide to step back and to say, like, I'm quitting and I'm dedicating myself to. I have a year to try something, and the difficulty was that it was not clear what that was. And just by doing, I had the time, I had the energy, and just by doing, you start to create something that suddenly just fits into, I guess, the only place that allows everyone any type of creative practice can fit, which is the arts. And so it took a while that I feel comfortable calling myself an artist, but that was a bit the process, and just then bit by bit it worked.
So in retrospective, like looking back, it becomes more clear also what the path towards where you are now is throughout the works.
I'm not sure. I feel the same way. It's just that I have been doing it for 15 years. So, but this idea of we were talking the other day about this idea of established artists, and I think something that it's key for if you really want to be an artist, you have to be sure that you want to be in a very unstable position for probably your whole life. And you have to accept that, and it has to be worth it, because if it's not worth it, it doesn't make any sense. But I don't think it's only for artists. It's the same for anyone that is doing something that is experimental, and that it's wanting to open up paths. If it's research, if it's philosophy, or if it's, I think, whatever field, you will find that the people who are really pushing a bit the boundaries, and it's normal, because it's not something that it's already accepted in a wider format.
Yeah, you're experimenting with something new. Yeah.
And sometimes it's okay, and sometimes it's wrong, in the sense that it doesn't work. So you have to accept that situation of instability is
stable.
It's the only stable thing. That's exactly it.
Great.
How we are going with time? Yeah, we have to move forward fast. So this project, I wanted to show this project. This was a project I think the projects that we have been talking about, they are relying more in this abstract idea of a space. Now we're talking about how virtual space, real space, time, how this connects, but it's quite abstract. This is one of the first pieces where I did something that suddenly I needed to link it with the human body in a very specific way. And this is a Napoleonic fort in the outskirts of Lyon, and I was invited to do a project here. The place was amazing, was huge, but the budget was very, very. This is also quite a standard thing. The budget was not the same size of the place. Let's put it like that. And so I wanted to do something with the place at the scale of the place, and there was this idea. The piece is called Promada architecturale, which is a concept coined by Le Corbusier when he speaks about cinema. No? And what I did is to take the whole fortress and trace like a path, like a walk around the fortress to discover like a kind of path that would make you discover the fortress, and we turn off all the lights. So it was this place is in the middle of nowhere, so it was completely blackout, completely dark at night, and there was this pulsating light. Oh, sorry, it's not. And this light that was moving in the sense of turning on and off, but gradually, so it would move with you, no? And and the key of the project was that this movement of the light, it was imagine like a bubble of light that is moving through darkness, and this bubble of light was moving at the average speed of someone walking. Actually, it was a kid. It was like a slow walking, no? A kid or an elder person, and what this produced is that it was a fixed movement that was a loop. So it was, and the idea was that the way to discover this place was time-based somehow. It was like a movie that you would unfold into space, and it will become the way of, like the walk was the movie of the place in a way, no? And you could decide to stop and not follow the light, but then the light would advance and you would just fade into darkness, no? You wouldn't see anything. This was a loop. There were several bubbles, so you would have to wait maybe just a couple of minutes for the next bubble of light that actually normally would be accompanied by a group of people, no? So, and it was a project that was extremely simple, but that it was very much based on the body, in the sense that it was the body and the walking speed of a body that was fixing. It was a time that it was not dictated by me, or it was not dictated by an abstract idea. It was dictated by the experience and by the body itself, no? And
how did people, because if you say it's also about the perception of the audience in this piece and how they perceive it, like how was the feedback of that, or how did you come to that realization this is more the embodied experience of the work?
Well, yeah, this is interesting because you think about the piece in some way, and then people do whatever they want. So sometimes it was very mixed, I would say. There were people who actually were following the light. Some interesting things happened. No? There was a part where a light was coming in one direction and the other one was coming in the other direction, and you would see groups of people like facing each other, not knowing a bit what should we, and scary situations in a way that you see people walking there in the darkness, and not in the darkness, but coming up. It was a very nice experience. But yeah, of course, like you have a lot of these pieces, you imagine them, and then when they happen, the way they happen, you get a lot of surprises, no? And you learn a lot from that.
Is there, a question? I see.
I have a question. How did you get to this idea? What was the origin of because you're talking about how it's working, but how do you get to this idea?
The idea was, I had this idea of wanting to I was thinking a lot about cinema and about how a film works, in the sense of how when you basically a film or video, no, it's a sequence of frames that in a certain proximity, and just for the act of sequencing them, suddenly becomes from something that is still and isolated into something continuous, no? And I was thinking about how to translate that to a spatial experience, no? So this piece, like, if in very abstract terms, it was like turning how a movie in space, or what if a space was a movie, how could it be done, no? And then you realize that also the time is not the time of the film, is a different time, is not the sequencing of frames, you sequence isolated points, but it was a bit like how you could discover I'm trying to distill the idea, but the base, I would say that the basic idea was that if you would have to discover a place, how if that place would be a movie, how would you like how would you experience a place in terms of time rather than in terms of space, no? Or even in the end, what I discovered is that this piece, it was talking about the space, but only in terms of time. So it was like you would, at any precise moment, you could only see a certain part of the fort and not other parts, no? And you would have to be, you could react to that, but it was like a movie that was advancing. Did I answer your question?
No, I have more questions. No more people than this.
There's
Thank you.
one more question in the back.
Yes, I can see in your works that you work with lightness, light, not color.
Mm-hmm.
Does this have any connection with the concept of time, space, or place that we're talking about?
Yes, it's a choice. Like for instance, the first version of the augmented sculpture, it had colors. It had some colors, and quite quickly I realized that that the colors actually were not important in the ideas I want to explore. So I got rid of them, and I haven't come back to to color since then. But I guess for the type of elements that I wanted to speak about, the important thing was the intensity, no? The chiaroscuro, no? This idea of what is shadow and what is light, and that vocabulary already gave me so much possibilities that I didn't felt the urge to jump into color, which is another whole world in itself. No?
There was one more question, yes.
Okay, now I was interested in the did this experiment had an arrival point? Because I was interested in the last point where you kind of intersect with time. Because when it's linear, when it's a linear path, time is sort of scheduled. But then you decided to make like multiple movies at some time. And was that like the arrival point, or?
The interesting thing is that it was a closed loop.
Okay.
So there was no starting point or arrival point. It was something that it was continuously happening, and there were several instances of this loop happening at the same time. So actually you would arrive exterior to the loop, and you would see the fortress from the distance, and you would see actually lights moving. And actually if you would invest enough time, you would kind of understand the dynamic of what was going on, no? And then people would decide to introduce themselves, to start following the light, no? In a very straightforward way. So and what I wanted is that all these things were, you didn't need to explain them, but that was something that people would understand gradually.
And there was some point in which there were like multiple lights coming together, right? Like in a room. And
There was a loop where there was a couloir, a pasillo. Yeah, a path like a corridor. There was a corridor where it was a closed. It was it was just ending. So the path was arriving to the end and then coming back. So there was a point where there was one loop that was coming back and the other was coming forward, and they would cross in this corridor, and that was an interesting situation. Well, I think I'm going to skip like half of the presentation, so we can talk later if you guys are curious. But these are some projects where I started to work with sound, and to work with sound, with also sequence sound, and I discovered that in this piece precisely that the potential of sound to create presence, and not only voices but just the movement of sound, the possibility just for the movement of sound to create like a very physical presence. No? This is another project that deals with sound in a completely different way. It's a project that the starting point is the disapparition of storks in Cáceres in Spain, in a medieval town in the south of Spain. And basically, what I did is this is from the year. No, it's not 2021. This is a photo from, I think it's 2009 or 2013, and this is the same place in 2019. No? And it's a place where all the storks disappeared. But the memory of the sound of the storks, which is very specific, no, it's called, I don't know, I have no idea how to say that in English. Clappering?
Yeah.
Okay. They do a very specific sound. And what I did is reintroduce this sound spatially into different places of the city, and people reacted, and that activated a memory of people. People started to look for the storks. People started creating stories about the storks. So it was a very interesting experiment on using sound. This is another project that uses sound, and that it's my first performance piece where I work with flamenco choreographer and dancer Patricia Guerrero and a cantaor, singer, and flamenco was very interesting to me because it's a dance where the dance is the movements of the body are aimed to create a sound, no? And so this connection between the visual and the sound that the body of a flamenco dancer is already doing, I was very interested into working with that but I think we have to move forward, and and I come I arrived to the first project. I wanted to stop a bit, and that I would say that it's more. You haven't seen the evolution because we haven't really been able to stop in all the projects, but these two projects, this one is a commission for St. Paul's Cathedral in London that I did in September, and I'm visiting the cathedral quite quickly. What I realized is that the most important things, the most important elements that were defining the space was, apart from the architecture, which was one of the key elements of the commission. It was the anniversary of Christopher Wren, which is a big figure. It's the only popular, well, it's a big, very architectural figure, a very important figure in the UK. And what I identify is that the sounds that were being produced, it was, I mean, as you can imagine, it was a project that raised also many questions on many levels, in the sense that it's an operating cathedral, it's a functional cathedral. No? So how to do something there that makes sense artistically, and that it's not swallowed also into the religious part of it. But so it had many levels, but I guess I like challenges. And what I identified is this idea of sound, no? as articulating structure in the whole piece. This is the sound spectrum of the choir singing evensong, no? For the beginning of it, no? And I started thinking about this idea of making the cathedral. One thing that I lacked when I saw these rituals using sound and using music is that I couldn't see a visual, even when the priest was just talking. Like, things would get lost in the space. No, you wouldn't see a visual coherent form taking place in the space at that scale. So my idea was simply like taking that sound and sculpting it formally in a way that you could actually not just listen to it, but see it. This is a bit the correlation between the different frequencies. So basically, for you to understand what we did, this of course this is not only my work, but I mean it's my work, but I work with a lot of. I mean, this is a project that involves a wide range of people, no? From the people who install it to the people who program the software that runs it. But basically, what we did is a custom software that was taking the sound live. Everything was happening live, and was breaking it into all the different frequencies, and all these frequencies were being mapped in the height of a light column. No? So if you had a high pitch sound, you would see it on the upper part of the column, and if you had a lower sound, you would see it on the lower part of the column. And what was really, this is my messy studio trying to, you know, it goes from here to this. So you can see how is how things look actually before being installed.
Can I ask you a question about the buildings that you work with, because this is a very particular building?
Yeah.
And you said before that the site difficult word, specificness is very important, and I can totally imagine that working in a church like this is already very much forming, or not forming, but maybe informing you about how to work with what is there. Like, how do you normally find that the buildings that you work with are already kind of like giving you the input for what wants to happen there?
Yes. These projects, I call them not even site-specific, but I call them contextual, because they are really a response to not only the spatial qualities but they are a response to many other cultural and even functional circumstances, variables that are related to that space. But they are really like a very precise. This piece is a very precise response, I would say, to this cathedral in a certain time, and it was a response also to the. Yeah, it would take us a good couple of hours to discuss everything, but there were. I read a lot about Christopher Wren, for instance, how he's the one who built St. Paul's. He built many churches, and he's probably the architect that gave that with more weight in the definition of London as a city. And he had some very interesting ideas, for instance, about the beauty. Related beauty to geometry, to mathematics. There were, light in religious. I studied a lot about light in religious context. No? The history of light in religion is super interesting, and there's a tradition of, for instance, one of the thoughts that I had is that the first audiovisual installation is probably the first documentation of an audiovisual installation could be understood as when you think about how God is represented in any, not only in Christianity, but in different types of religions, is usually represented with the image of a pulsating light. No? So this synchronicity between sound and light, to see this in texts from really ancient times, I thought it was quite interesting. No?
Yeah, it's beautiful to hear also how the process of working with something, there's a lot of research that goes into it, right? It's not just like you see a church like, poof, okay, this is going to be it, but there's a whole process going through that. Yeah, it's very beautiful. Like, we cannot hear it now, but I've seen videos where with the sound, and it's absolutely amazing.
I have a little clip.
it's very, very beautiful. Also with the singing with it, amazing.
So, I mean, the idea of the piece is quite simple, but getting it to the point where all the subtleties that you are listening, that they can be visualized, and what was beautiful from my perspective, from the artist's perspective, is that it felt like, for instance, when he was representing the organ, the fact that the organ produced different types of sounds produced a different type of visual output, no, very different than from the voices, no, where everything was much more gradual, while the differentiate, like the way tones are differentiated in a keyboard makes that things were much more organized, more squared, no, and more ordered in a certain way, and this contrast was super interesting.
Before we move on, there was one question here.
I have a question.
Yes.
You said that the conversations and just like the whole meetings were taking a long time. In general, how long the project came, like to be as this?
From start to
Yeah.
finish, like this project. This project in London, for instance, this was very fast for the size of the project. It happened very fast, and I think my first visit to the cathedral was in March, April of 2023. Then it was unsure for for several months, and basically it's a project that we did from June to August, so it was quite fast.
How many people were in the project?
I mean, I was working with 3-4 people closely, then a whole team to install it, then a lot of conversations with there are different levels of production, but I wouldn't. It's not everyone full time all the time, but there was a lot of people involved. Let's put it like that, and maybe around 5 people, like quite intensively. And at the time of the installation, for instance, we were usually 10 or something like that.
So we have a few more minutes.
Do we have 2
yes,
minutes?
Yes.
2 max.
2 max?
Yeah.
No, I think it's enough. I wanted to finish with a project in Ukraine, which has been it's a project that I literally did 2 weeks ago. So I was in early, it was the 12th of November. I was in Kiev, and it's a project that started with an exhibition where I traveled also to Kiev at the beginning of the year, and it's a project that started an agency called DTF that did this project, Model of Temporality, inviting a French curator to create an exhibition basically in a space done by an architectural studio there in Kiev. And there was a mix of contemporary art, street art, and the idea was to try to work with culture in an environment of war. No? Basically, going on with the research of this project, I discovered a very important figure in literature in Ukraine, Sergei Hadan. That he's a writer, he's a poet, he has a band and plays he makes concerts for the military in the front line, so everything is quite crazy. But he describes, I encountered him, I had the possibility also to make a question publicly and about the importance of culture in times of war, and he responded with a very beautiful. He said that culture is like thinking. There was all the time, like as an artist participates in an exhibition in times of war, you wonder like, is this what people requires right now? It doesn't make any sense, or it's actually we should maybe invest the energies and the time in something else. And he responded very, very accurately and very interestingly, saying that culture is not only possible, but more necessary than ever. No? Because culture is what makes us human. When culture is absent and leaves a void, fear takes its place. And talking to many poets and to many people living in Ukraine right now, you realize that the culture is super important, because there's also cultural war. It's also very interesting how, for instance, the Russian army and the Russian aggression in general has been targeting very specifically cultural aspects, cultural like heritage, like language, and it's very interesting how culture is becoming a form of resistance in many levels. No, how the language is becoming, for instance, Ukrainian. Many people just spoke Russian before, and many people and even elderly people that haven't, that they only spoke Russian, they are turning at 80 years old into Ukrainian as a form of resistance. No? And to see all these elements is super interesting. So I did some studies there about, this will take more than 2 minutes, but
you can have 2 more.
I'm going to, basically I did some studies for that exhibition where I work with poets, and I wanted to integrate their voices into locations, into places that were linked to war.
Коли війська вже не було, почався бій за кладовище, а саме надходив Великдень. І дерев'яні хрести на свіжих могилах випустили свої паперові квіти. Червоні, блакитні, жовті, салатові, оранжеві, малинові.
You can see that video in my website, but you get the idea, no? So I started working with these poets I visited Irpin, I visited Bucha, I visited Ostomel, and many places that were absolutely devastated by the war. And what I realized being there, and what it was shocking, is that in all these places that have been completely destroyed, you would see people renovating, reconstructing. It was amazing to see how quickly they were recovering and trying to, there were like 200 in these areas. They were like, you could see like 100 carpenters fixing all the roofs of a whole neighborhood. Even the neighborhoods that were really devastated, they were tearing down the buildings to build new buildings already. And this is in the middle of a war. So basically this shifted, being there and talking to people and shifted a lot the perspective. And I wanted to do a project that was not focusing in destruction. No? That it's something that was very clear to me, that from a European perspective, what we see in the media is not what is experienced there, and that they were a bit frustrated by this idea that everything is related to destruction, when the people living there, what they are trying to build is hope, what they are trying to build is what is the future, how we can, it's all about resistance, it's about resilience, it's about the future. So we started working in monuments that have been protected in Kiev with sand, with scaffolding, in order to protect them for when a bomb strikes, and you have all these debris being flying around, that these monuments are not damaged. No? And basically the project was quite simple. What you have seen is to integrate the poetry of all these poets into these buildings, into pulsating light. I don't have a video of this yet. I showed you some photos. And it was like if the monuments inside this scaffolding were coming back to life with these voices that were coming from inside of these kind of also coffin-like structures, no, that remind a bit about somehow about death. And I want to finish just reading one of the poems of one of the poets that it's Arthur Dron, and the translation is, you know, is not super accurate, but he's a poet that wrote this poem from the front. So he's a poet and a soldier, no? And there were poems that were quite emotionally speaking when you talk with these people and you see, you know, you see what their experiences, and you read these poems. There's a quite and it goes, when we talk about hope, what we are really talking about is children. I'm grateful because the memory of you still comes out of me after all this time. And one day, all children will have to squint from the sun, and those of us who survive will see that it was all not in vain. We rarely talk about hope here, or patriotism, or about the homeland, but if we do, it is always about children. And you know, when I think about you now, I imagine what kind of child you were, how you used to squint from the sun. Those of us who survive will be silent for a long time because there's no use talking about hope when there she is, standing there in her dirty shorts, scratching her mosquito-bitten arms, showing the sun her baby teeth. So this is the end of my talk.
Thank you, Pablo.
Thank you.
Thank you for sharing your practice with us and also sharing some really new work. This has just been in November. We went a little bit over time, so normally I would really like to ask if there's any questions, but let's keep them for the drinks. Pablo will be here, the guys from WERC will be here, I will be here. So if you have any questions, please just come up to us and ask anything that you would like to ask. And thank you for being here and sharing.
Yeah, with this cold. Thanks for coming with this cold.
Thank you everybody for coming. Before we go and have drinks and ask Pablo 100 more questions, I have a couple of short things. First I want to say thank you to the team, our team. I'm going to probably forget people, but I'm going to start. Just the people of Amber, Yul and Hanne and Lara, of course, and Sanne, we're not there. Thank you very much for organizing all of this again. It's amazing. And then we have a couple of dates coming up that are in the same vein or in the same sort of new media style. From the thing that is the farthest back to the thing that's the most recent. The next artist talk is with Niki Asman at 19th of April, here again, write it down, and you'll get an invitation, of course, as well. So Willow Art Space is a digital art space from Groningen. They make an online art space and invite young artists. On the 20th of January, they have a talk. Find them on Instagram. We'll also be talking there if you want to hear more of us. And then from Grand Theatre, there's the Club Forwards. They host a talk with artists from Groningen about the performing arts and new media in performing arts. Okay, thank you very much.
Social.